They say there's no point recording log video in 8-bit color. They say 8-bit log is only 256 values per channel, which is not enough. They say 8-bit log gives you banding, digital noise, and messed up colors. But what about 10-bit log video? As smartphone filmmakers, we often find ourselves looking in envy at DSLR owners and their access to the full richness of 10-bit color. But envy no more, my friends, because 10-bit color is now available to us too. On certain devices, that is. Yes, I'm afraid not all smartphone owners can access 10-bit color. For iPhone users, you will need one of the latest iPhone 12 devices, or later. For Android users, only certain devices can deliver you 10-bit color. For example, my Samsung Note 20 Ultra can, while my old Samsung S9 can't. To access these 10-bit files, you're going to need an app like FiLMiC Pro or McPro24fps. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the process. Using FiLMiC Pro and McPro24fps for Android, we can record 10-bit video, but there's also this stuff called Dolby Vision for iPhone and HDR 10 Plus for Android devices like Samsung. So what's the difference? First, I'm going to look at the differences between things like 8-bit and 10-bit, SDR, HDR, HDR10, Dolby Vision, and so on. But if you want to skip ahead to the app tutorials, I've time-stamped everything, so just go ahead. 8-bit color gives you 256 tone and color values per channel. Those channels are red, green, and blue. On the other hand, 10-bit color gives you 1024 values in each channel. Thing is, video is delivered in 8-bit via your monitor, your TV, Netflix, YouTube, Amazon Prime, and so on. So what is the point in shooting in 10-bit color? Well, pretty much we only shoot in 10-bit color if we're going to work on the color in our editing software. If you want to edit the color of a video clip, then more information gives you more ingredients to bake your cake with later. If you're looking more deeply into shooting video on your smartphone, or indeed any other camera, you may have come across terms such as SDR and HDR. The DR part stands for dynamic range, and the S or H stands for standard or high. This can get confusing because we also talk about dynamic range when referring to a camera's sensor performance, or when using log settings. But simply though, HDR video is video with a greater dynamic range than SDR video. Remember though, for HDR to work, it has to be captured, processed, e.g. edited and graded, and displayed using HDR-compatible technology. You might notice when you're taking a photo or video, the letters HDR pop up on the screen briefly. So this is just to let you know HDR is being implemented. HDR does not change the actual video file. Instead, it instructs your TV or monitor how to display the video, a bit like a film director sending footage to a colorist, with a whole bunch of notes on how he wants the film to look. HDR is like those notes, telling whatever is displaying the video what to do to make it look right. HDR essentially adds an extra brightness level, but it's not like just boosting the brightness of the whole image. Instead, HDR adds brightness to the brighter parts of the screen. Thing is, if you're aiming for the film look, then you might actually want less brightness. In fact, I was recently going through the settings on my Samsung 4K TV and switched on HDR. Everything suddenly looked brighter, but somewhat more like video, and less like film, so I turned it off again. But this is really something to think about as it concerns a transition from film to digital. There's frame interpolation, which can make old classic movies look like cheap video. There's high frame rate films like The Hobbit, which some people hate because, again, it doesn't look like film. You can see the difference right now. Just open up FiLMiC Pro and switch it to record and playback at 60 frames per second, if you have that option. The image on the screen immediately looks sharper, cleaner, more digital, perhaps more like reality in some senses, but less romantic, I would say. Perhaps we are in a transition to a more digital look for our moving image entertainment. Will the film look become something from the past that we eventually let go in favor of digital wizardry? Who knows? Video containing 10-bit color is like video containing 8-bit color, except there's a lot more image information. And more information means you have more ingredients to cook with when baking your color cakes. Meanwhile, Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus are competing image optimization systems for recording and delivering HDR images on your screens. But generally speaking, these systems only work on monitors that are compatible. In fact, if you Google Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, your top results will probably be all about TVs. Most consumers are interested in consuming HDR content, not creating it. But anyway, let's look again at how this technology works. Again, feel free to skip ahead, but you might want to understand this before you start filming with it enabled. HDR10 was introduced in 2015 and sends static metadata to the video stream, which is encoded information on color calibration settings. Meanwhile, HDR10 Plus was introduced in 2017 and sends dynamic metadata, which allows TVs to set up color and brightness levels frame by frame. So, while HDR10 has the same metadata for the whole clip, HDR10 Plus has different metadata for each frame of video. So you can see why this is considered superior. So, Samsung devices, amongst others, implement HDR10 Plus, while iPhone 12 devices use Dolby Vision. What's the difference? One difference is that Dolby Vision requires a license. For example, for a TV to implement Dolby Vision, the TV maker needs to pay about $3 per TV to Dolby Laboratories. So, Dolby Vision is potentially higher quality than HDR10 or HDR10 Plus, but as implemented in the iPhone, there's not too much difference. There's actually less content around in Dolby Vision compared to HDR10, but as Netflix originals are now being mastered in Dolby Vision, there will be more in the future. All HDR processes are implemented using a tone map curve and multi-exposure. The metadata, those director's notes, tells your display how to implement this tone mapping when displaying the video. Now, bear in mind that these tone map curves and multi-exposure processes make the same changes, whether the video is 8-bit or 10-bit. HDR processes depend on standards, but there is no standard for 8-bit HDR because HDR video requires aggressive tone remapping, and aggressive tone remapping requires more than 8-bit color. I know this is all very technical sounding, but I think it's useful to have some understanding of the processing going on inside your phone as you toggle these settings on and off in apps like FiLMiC Pro and McPro24fps. So there are currently 3 HDR video standards. There's HLG, which is a hybrid log gamma, and there's HDR10, and which includes HDR10 Plus, which has dynamic metadata, and then there's Dolby Vision, which also has dynamic metadata. Regarding Dolby Vision, Apple has a symbiosis of 2 standards in iPhone 12 devices. HLG 10-bit with Dolby Vision dynamic metadata, but not 12-bit PQ curve and P3 D65. So it turns out this is the same as the HDR10 Plus, except with Apple's unique twist. FiLMiC just recently updated their app to include 10-bit recording for both iOS and Android. As I say, it's only certain devices though. For iPhone, it's only iPhone 12 models. I'll be using my Samsung Note 20 Ultra in this video. Other devices may work a bit differently. In FiLMiC Pro, open up Settings, then tap Resolution. In the new version, you will now find a 10-bit HDR on and off option. If you toggle it on, you'll probably notice the app automatically switches to HEVC H265 codec. And if you tap this little I for information, a text box pops up telling you 10-bit video gives you more shadow detail and better color representation. And then it says for optimum results, use the new log version 3, which is specifically designed for 10-bit. If you open up the color controls and go to the log settings while still in 8-bit, you'll see FiLMiC have added a new option here. There used to be 4, now there's 5. The one added is called Native, which is the default. The default used to be Natural. Anyway, now if I go back, switch to 10-bit and return to the log video settings, you'll see it says 10-bit at the top here instead of 8-bit. You'll also see the options are different: native, natural, linear, hybrid and log version 3. And there's a message here telling you can't use these tools in the native default setting. Now notice what happens when I switch to natural. At the top it tells you dynamic tone remapping is disabled. Switch back to native and it enables dynamic tone remapping again. And this is because, as I said earlier, dynamic tone remapping is not really compatible with manual control. Now, when you do this on an iPhone in FiLMiC Pro, it doesn't do that. And that's because, as I said earlier, you can't switch off tone remapping in iPhones. So this is a good indication of the complexity of what we're dealing with here. There's 10-bit video with the option of recording in log, then there's 10-bit HDR10+, and 10-bit Dolby Vision, which is something else. Also, I noticed that as soon as I switch to 10-bit on my Note 20 Ultra, the image washes out before I've even switched to log, whereas in 8-bit it doesn't do this. If I select natural, for example, we would expect to get a ready-to-go image, but this looks like a log setting to me, so I'm not sure why it would do that. But it could be that this 10-bit feature isn't fully developed in Android devices yet. Linear is the most contrasting option, and when I select that, the midtones are very reduced, and everything looks overly contrasting. Hybrid is the hybrid log gamma option. Last but not least, we have the new log version 3, so select the option that you want and start filming. You can start color correcting and grading right away, but if you want to convert your log version 3 video clip to a Rec 709 color space first, you can download the official LUT from the FiLMiC Pro website, import into your editor and apply. Open up Video Recording Settings, scroll down and switch from AVC to HEVC. Unless you are using the H.265 codec, the 10-bit color option won't be available. Now scroll down a little bit further and switch from 8-bit to 10-bit. I found with my Samsung that when I switch to 10-bit, my Note 20 Ultra starts adding metadata to the image, but only for monitoring. The file records flat, however. But to make sure you are getting the correct flat profile when monitoring as well as recording, there's a little adjustment you can make. Open the cogwheel settings next to the camera settings. Now, under Preview, where it asks if you want to use GPU, switch this to Yes. And now that metadata will no longer interfere with what you're seeing as you record. Notice below this setting is an option to preview with a LUT applied. This is often how LUTs are actually used, simply to give the filmmaker an understanding of how the image will look once it's reverted back to the correct color space. Near the left corner below the exposure wheel there are 3 buttons. Left, gamma curve, middle, white balance lock, and right, GPU curve. The left and right buttons access a host of different log profiles. The profiles in the left menu, the gamma curves, are supposed to be the higher quality ones. And once you open that menu, tap the bottom button of the 4 buttons on the left, which opens the next menu, which contains all the gamma curves. Tap where it says Auto to open up a list of choices, and now choose your log setting. To deLog your video clip, you can download all the LUTs from the McPro24fps website. You don't have to use these, as a professional colorist will most likely just start working with a flat file. However, this can help you get closer to a natural look quicker. Once you've downloaded the LUTs, choose the appropriate one and import it into your editing or coloring software, and now apply the LUT to the 10-bit log clip. Now, this is only a problem in Android devices using both FiLMiC Pro and McPro24fps. If you switch to 10-bit recording, the HDR metadata is attached to the video. In your gallery, the video might look strange, as well as in some editing software. For example, I've seen this in LumaFusion and Adobe Premiere Pro. Basically, the HDR metadata is causing the video to come out wrong. In McPro24fps, you can switch the app to strip out the metadata. In FiLMiC Pro, you can't at the moment, but hopefully they're working on this. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.